Hi, I'm Dr. Jen Gunter, author of the Vagina Bible and host of Jensplaining, and I'm here to bust some myths. So I get asked a lot about squirting, and if you look at videos on the internet, you will see videos with massive gushing of fluid coming out, and there is no secret gland in the vagina that's capable of excreting more than 1 or 2 milliliters of fluid at most. So the majority of videos that you see online are either acting or that's release of urine, which is totally fine. It doesn't mean that your experience with squirting is invalid. What it means is it's just important to know it's happening. It's certainly possible that when you release a large amount of fluid with orgasm, which we know to be urine from some studies, that you're having a stronger orgasm or you're stimulating the nerves in a different way. So if it feels good, that's all that matters. And remember, sex is supposed to be wet and messy. The history behind the G-spot has been a bit misinterpreted. So definitely there is very sensitive erectile tissue on what we call the anterior surface of the vagina, kind of right underneath the urethra. But that's not a discrete gland. That's part of the clitoris. The clitoris is a really large structure that you see a little bit on the outside, but it runs very intimate with the urethra and under the labia. And so in that area, there may very well be some stimulation or a really great source of arousal for some women and maybe not for everybody, because your erectile tissue may be in different locations because we're all built differently. So instead of calling it the G-spot, because Dr. Grafenberg wasn't describing a different gland, he was actually talking about the clitoral tissue. We like to call it the come here spot. Trans men have a higher incidence of having abnormal cervical cancer screening, and the reason for that is twofold. One is it can be more uncomfortable to actually have the screening done if you're on hormone blockers or on testosterone, because that can make the vagina quite tender. And so if things are really sore, it can be hard for the doctor or nurse practitioner to actually get an adequate sample. But also the inflammation that can happen sometimes from being on testosterone can also affect the results. So it's super important to get your screening regularly, and also really important to follow up on an abnormal screen. After gender-affirming surgery for trans women, there's a bit of a myth that the vagina won't have feeling or might be difficult to be sexually active, and that's not true as long as the procedure is done by someone who understands the surgery well and you get the right kind of post-operative care that you need. One important point is after a vaginoplasty or a vaginal construction is that almost always ongoing use of vaginal dilators is required. If wearing white clothes was good for your skin, then dermatologists would be telling you to dress in white from head to toe. They don't do that. That's a purity myth, right? So wearing white cotton underwear because girls who wear black lace thongs are apparently, loose or something, which we're not. So you should wear the underwear that you like, that's comfortable, and whether your underwear is white and cotton or black and lace doesn't have an effect on whether or not you get a yeast infection. However, if your underwear is uncomfortable and it rubs, then it might chafe, and that's going to be irritating. So wear what's comfortable and what you like. So is PMS real, premenstrual syndrome? Yes, it is. That means a constellation of symptoms that might affect mood or bloating or discomfort that happens, so emotional outbursts that happen after ovulation and ends with your period. It has to be confined in that 2-week period of time. It's a definite real condition, and there are some treatments that can be helpful. So it's important to recognize that it's true. So how did the myth of cranberry juice and bladder infections get started? Well, a lot of the myths that I debunk actually are based on a valid hypothesis. So in medicine, someone has an idea, a hypothesis, and you say, oh, maybe we should test that out. And while people are testing the hypothesis, a lot of people actually sometimes start the treatment if it's not dangerous, like cranberry juice, it's not dangerous. And so the idea was that there's a substance in cranberry juice that gets into the bladder that could inhibit the growth of bacteria. It makes sense on paper. However, no one's even proven if that actually works. So the studies tell us that women who drink cranberry juice don't have fewer bladder infections than those who do. It's been well tested. So the hypothesis has been put to rest, as we do in science, and it's time to discard it. I want to address the myth of toxins in the uterus, because this is a very common thing, and you might even read about it on sites like Goop, where they talk about steaming your vagina to clean your uterus from toxins. It's one of the oldest myths of the patriarchy, and I want you to think about it for a minute. If menstrual blood were toxic, if the uterus needed special cleansing, how does an embryo implant in there in such a toxic environment, right? So you don't even need to be a doctor to dispel that myth. Anybody who tells you there's toxins in the uterus does not have your best health or your best interests at heart.